Cambodia is a country that is often overlooked when traveling to Southeast Asia. However, Cambodia is a must visit, not only to learn about its unique culture, but also to learn about its history.
We are in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and Cambodia has an all too dark history that is far too recent. Today we are going to go to the killing fields and to the S21 Museum to learn more about the history and this horrible thing that happened in Cambodia. We're not going to vlog while we're there because we find that will be very disrespectful. We will learn more about it, take a guided tour, but when we get back we'll do a decompressing kind of talk and just share what we learned while on the tour. If you are going, you need to make sure that your knees and your shoulders are covered for both male and female. So I have my little dress, skirt, and James is just wearing long shorts. So that is all you really do need to know in advance.
The Khmer Rouge was a communist group in Cambodia that took control of the country in 1975 when their army captured the capital. Immediately after gaining power, they started their social re-engineering policies with agricultural reform, national self-sufficiency, and weeding out political opponents. The Khmer Rouge executed hundreds of thousands of people, and widespread famine occurred because of their failed agricultural reform. About 25% of the Cambodian population died during the regime, which ended in 1979.
The S21 Genocide Museum is located in the city center of Phnom Penh. The audio guide starts in the courtyard, where you are briefed on the history and how this site used to be a school before being forced to turn into a prison. Learning that the S21 prison was once a school was absolutely heartbreaking. With us both being teachers, we know that schools are meant to be a safe place for students. What was once a place for students to grow, to learn, and to play turned into a place of fear, torture, and pain.
The Khmer Rouge brought men, women, and children in blindfolds into the prison. They arrested educated people, people who spoke multiple languages, people who wore glasses, people who were religious, and even professionals into the prison because they were potential enemies of the state.
The prison was separated into 4 different buildings. The first building we looked at was Building A. As soon as you walk towards it, you can see a once-was classroom turned into a prison cell. There is a single bed that prisoners were chained to and tortured. The playset where children used to play was turned into a torture device. There was a list of demands that prisoners were required to follow, and if they were not met, they would be brutally punished.
Building B holds the remnants of the prisoners who were stripped of their belongings when arriving at S21. It also shows the outfits of the Khmer Rouge. Within this building, there are several halls full of hundreds of photographs of the prisoners held at the prison. We were not comfortable taking videos of this as they were real people. Not only were Cambodians taken and held at S21, but also foreigners. Each prisoner was forced to write and sign a false confession listing the crimes they had committed against the Khmer Rouge and also naming other people as potential enemies of the state.
Through the many stories of the audio guided tour, one of them stood out the most to us, and that was about an Australian traveler. Him and his friend were sailing through the waters, and unfortunately they went into the Cambodian Sea, not knowing what was happening in the country. Both of them were taken in as prisoners and were forced to write false confessions. In their confessions, they referenced pop culture and even their family members' names, stating that they were enemies of the Khmer Rouge.
Building C was turned into small holding cells, crudely constructed of brick and concrete. Multiple people were put into these cells, and as you can see, they were barely larger than us. The top floor contained group holding cells where people were chained together in rows. From the S21 prison, there were only 12 survivors, and these survivors provided much of the information about what happened and the daily life inside the prison. After the museum, we hopped into the tuk-tuk and headed to the killing fields. Killing fields are not only in Phnom Penh, but are all over Cambodia, and it is estimated that 1.7 million people were executed during the Khmer regime. The killing fields outside Phnom Penh is now a memorial for all the people who lost their lives during the Khmer Rouge regime. Prisoners were taken to these killing fields at night, believing that they were traveling to a new home, but then subsequently executed and buried in mass graves. In order to hide their actions, the Khmer Rouge played loud music over speakers and used blunt objects to execute the prisoners.
During the regime, the fields had different buildings, such as a guardhouse, a weapons storage, or even a holding cell for prisoners. After the regime ended in 1979, most of the buildings were destroyed. That is because the local people used whatever materials that they could find to survive and rebuild what was destroyed. As we walked around the graves, we listened to the audio guide, which shares stories from survivors explaining the cruel reality of what was happening. The last place to visit inside the graves is the memorial hall in the center, which is full of bones that have come to the surface over the years, displaying the many acts of torture that the individuals endured. The Khmer Rouge ended in 1979, but their actions have had a long-lasting impact on Cambodia.
The Khmer Rouge might have destroyed all of Cambodia's infrastructure and killed a fourth of its population, but it has not stopped the Cambodians' kindness and openness to all the people who visit